Certainly is sounding a lot like Christmas, and thank you for the team for leading us and also the choir. It's good sitting over here on worship time because, good singers, so that's awesome. Welcome everyone. It's so good to be in church with you this morning. Thanks so much for Derek for preaching last Sunday, a great God who offers great forgiveness. As many of you know, last weekend Vicky and I gained a daughter-in-law as we enjoyed seeing our son and his fiancée get married. And I was very blessed to have the best seat in the house as I officiated at their wedding. It was a great day, and thank you for your prayers for our family. It would seem very reasonable to me that whether you're a regular here or whether you're a holidaying guest of ours this morning or whether you're watching online for the first time, that you would expect at this particular season of the year that you would get a Christmas-themed sermon. Would I be right in thinking that would be your expectation? Well, you're all very intelligent and very perceptive because indeed that is what is going to occur today, as it will next Sunday as well as we lead into Christmas. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, what a joyous time of the year. What a joy it is for us to be in the house of the Lord to worship and to remember. And Lord, as we come to your word now, we ask for help. We ask, Lord, that as the words are spoken, that they would be more than just words, that behind them would be your meaning, would be your encouragement and your help. So, Lord, we commit this message to you now in Christ's name. Amen. Sometimes I make it very clear through the title of the sermon that I give, broadly what the content of the sermon is going to be. For instance, recently as we went through the series of He Said What, most of the titles for those sermons gave you a really good idea of what it was that I was going to be speaking about. For instance, when I spoke about Jesus saying, I am the way, the truth, and the life, well, you've got a pretty good idea what I'm going to be speaking about in that particular message. Today's sermon title, 3, is not so clear. 3. What a strange title for a sermon. Now, I'm praying that as I reinforce this number 3, and as I bring out aspects of the Christmas story, that you'll be able to actually recall this sermon for months to come. And even throughout the next week or two, if people say, what did Peter speak about on the 17th of December? You're going to remember the number 3. And from that, you might be able then to explain a little bit more of what the message was about instead of a long title of a deep theological matter. So 3, if nothing else, when you walk out today, if I ask you what the sermon was about, if you give me the answer 3, you're one word into remembering what it was about. Now, I can't say that I've got a favourite number. I do have a favourite colour, but not so much a number. But perhaps you do. You've got a famous or a number that you enjoy. Like many people like the number 7. A lot of biblical scholars love the number 40 because of all the significance throughout the Old Testament and also the New Testament where the number 40 relates. I do have a strong feeling about the number 3, though. What a great number. And I've been thinking about 3s and to a degree how strong the number is. For instance, which shape is generally known to be the strongest? The triangle. 3 sides. You see it in all sorts of design work throughout our world. The shape of the triangle is as strong as any other shape. Now, if you had some twine, even perhaps a thread of cotton, you know that while it is relatively easy to break a single strand of that cotton, even not too hard to break 2 strands if they were put together. But do you know how difficult it is to break 3 strands of cotton that are entwined together. It's what Ecclesiastes says in the Old Testament, that a cord of 3 strands is very difficult to break. What are some other great references to 3? How about the 3 persons of the Godhead? The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. How about Jesus being in the tomb for 3 days, just as Jonah was in the belly of the great fish for 3 days? Now, I know I could start quite a discussion on this next one, but I think that 3 kids is about the perfect number to have. And up until 1 week ago, I had the perfect number, but now that we've got a daughter-in-law, well, that makes 4. What am I to do? Well, it's time to rephrase things and now state, well, I've got 3 daughters now. So 3 keeps coming into the picture. You know, I could go on and on about the number 3 this morning, but to ensure that you are not here for 3 hours, I'll get to the Christmas story. No doubt you would, as I would, personally consider what the significance of 3 might be in the Christmas story. And we can start off today by dismissing a sermon on the 3 wise men, because there's only 2 wise men. No. And we're not going to talk about the 3 gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh either. My thoughts and theme for today's sermon are about the 3 wise women of the Christmas story. And it's a sermon with intent to honour the role of women in the biblical story. From day 6 of creation, right throughout all of the recordings of the Old Testament and the New Testament, women have featured at key moments for key purposes. And arguably, these 3 women that I will speak of today sit at the very pointy end of any list of influential women of the world. And these 3 women that I'm going to talk about display for us, as they did in their day, levels of wisdom worthy to be emulated. Now, I'm thinking that many of you would be able to name these 3 wise women of the Christmas story, but to save any embarrassment, there'll be no quiz this morning. I'll front load this sermon with the 3 women's names. They are Elizabeth, Mary, and Anna. Now, these 3 impressive women who, despite their difficult circumstances, they display magnetic wisdom that all the women listening to my voice can be impressed by and learn from today. And men, we ought to listen up too, because there's a distinct lack of wisdom in many men today, and we can learn a lot from the women of Scripture and also from the women that are seated nearby us today. Now, Luke. If you've got your scriptures, I encourage you to open up to the Gospel of Luke. The Gospel writer there gives us a view into the lives of these women as he writes about the birth of Jesus the Christ. So from the beginning of Luke, and Luke is believed to be a doctor, we hear these words. Many people have tried to tell the story of what God has done among us. They wrote what we have been told by the ones who were there in the beginning and saw what happened. So I made a careful study of everything and then decided to write and tell you exactly what took place, Honourable Theophilus. I have done this to let you know the truth about what you have been told. Now, I like Luke, and I really like the way that he begins his gospel. It's like Luke has no other intent than to deeply study the historical facts around the life of Jesus Christ and then to put these words down in such a way that we can see that they are factual and that they are truthful. And when we come to the Christmas story, what a joy it is that we are not chasing a myth or a made-up Santa Claus, but rather we are reading from a factual record of the birth of Jesus Christ. Now, Luke is going to introduce for us the first woman of the incarnation story. It's from verse 5. When Herod was king of Judea, there was a priest by the name of Zechariah from the priestly group of Abijah. His wife Elizabeth was from the family of Aaron. Both of them were good people and pleased the Lord God by obeying all that he had commanded. But they did not have children. Elizabeth could not have any, and both Zechariah and Elizabeth were already old. Now, for the next 25 verses, we see an exchange of words that occurs between the angel of the Lord, Gabriel, and while the content of the discussion is very noteworthy, words like, you and your wife are going to have a baby, he'll be called John. Your son will be a great servant of the Lord, he'll lead many people back to the Lord. Your son will get people ready for the coming of the Messiah, the coming of Jesus. And the content of all of that conversation is very impressive and something that is very relevant for us to discuss as we're thinking of the Christmas story. But what strikes me particularly in this story is Zechariah's unbelief about the fact that his wife is going to be able to have a child. And his unbelief makes him mute for the next 9 months. We read in verse 20, the angel says, you have not believed what I have said, so you will not be able to say a thing until all this happens. But everything will take place when it is supposed to. It's almost, in my view, Gabriel is saying to Zechariah, even though you do not believe, the plan is still going ahead. And it's still going to work out exactly the way I want it to work out and on time. And it's almost like, so he's saying, Zechariah, you just keep quiet. You just go and sit over in your corner and I'll look to Elizabeth. She'll be the one that's going to now be the feature over this 9-month period. And so we begin to notice Elizabeth. And what do we see? What does Luke tell us about Elizabeth? Well, yes, she's married to a priest who serves in God's temple in Jerusalem. Now, Elizabeth has a famous family heritage through the line of Aaron, so she possibly was a PK herself, a priest's kid. And now she's married to a priest. Luke in verse 6 lets us know that Elizabeth is a godly woman, faithfully following the teachings of God. And we'll just pause there for a moment. Elizabeth is wise. She has godly wisdom because she has listened to the message of God, spoken through the family heritage that she has, and through the teachings from God through His holy word. And she has wisely chosen to obey the commands of the Lord. And women, please know that that is your first wise act, to know God's word and to follow it. And as the soon-to-be mother of John the Baptist, what else do we know about Elizabeth? Verse 7 tells us that she, as yet, does not have any children. And I'll jump ahead and add what we read in verse 18. You'll see there. Even though Zechariah's unbelief has caused him to be mute, at least he makes a very, very wise statement about his wife's age. And this occurs in his discussion with Gabriel. It's in verse 18, and I've chosen to quote from the NIV translation. Listen up, particularly you men. Zechariah asked the angel, referring to the message that his wife would soon become pregnant, how can I be sure of this? I am an old man, and my wife is well along in years. Now, men, do you see what Zechariah has done there? Yeah. So Elizabeth is mature in years and childless. And as we have spoken in years past, we understand that a childless woman did not have an easy time of it, as such an emphasis was placed on mothering as being the only real meaningful role that a woman had in that society. So despite Elizabeth's age and many, many decades of not being able to have children, she once again slept with Zechariah. And yes, in accordance with God's plan, despite all the odds, Elizabeth is pregnant with a baby boy who 30 years later is going to walk with Jesus down into the River Jordan and baptize him. Elizabeth had many choices in her life. Yet despite her circumstances, this is how she responded to God's blessing. And these words are in verse 25. What the Lord has done for me will keep people from looking down on me. Our next wise woman, despite her youthful age, is Mary, the mother of Jesus Christ. Now, in many ways, Mary is like the exact opposite of Elizabeth. She is very young. She is unmarried. She's engaged to a blue-collar, working-class carpenter. And she lives in an out-of-the-way small town called Nazareth. And unlike Elizabeth, she has never been with a man. And of course, pregnancy was not on her agenda at all. Yet in many ways, Mary is just like Elizabeth in her wisdom of how she responds to God's miraculous work which is about to take place in her life. Note in this instance that the angel Gabriel does not announce the pregnancy news to the man in the relationship. That didn't work so well with Zechariah and Elizabeth. We'll think we'll just go straight to the girls and let them know. So go straight to Mary in verse 26, and he says, 1 month later, God sent the angel Gabriel to the town of Nazareth in Galilee with a message for a virgin named Mary. She was engaged to Joseph from the family of King David. Now, we've probably all reflected on this turn of events that Mary is being confronted with. We've probably asked the questions of why her and how come all this had to happen in this way. And I think compared to us, though, Mary's questions were even more earnest. So let's note something of her journey. We see in verse 29 that Mary was confused. She really was somewhat dumbfounded by the angel's words. Now, initially, there's no mention of pregnancy, that she's going to be pregnant in the initial words. She's still confounded or confused when she hears the words, the angel greeted Mary and said, "You are truly blessed. The Lord is with you." And that's the part that confused her. Who, me, is going to be blessed. And so it moves on from there as Gabriel gently reveals a little more as he says then in verse 30, "Don't be afraid. God is pleased with you and you will have a son. His name will be Jesus. He'll be great and will be called the Son of God Most High. The Lord God will make him king as his ancestor David was. He will rule the people of Israel forever and his kingdom will never end." You sort of see the succession of astonishing aspects to this message from the Lord's angel. You are blessed and God is pleased with you. Why would God have been pleased with Mary? Because although she is only very young, she, like her relative Elizabeth, must have been a faithful woman. How was Zechariah and Elizabeth pleasing to God? Because they knew the word of God and they obeyed it. And for God also to be pleased with Mary, the same would have been true. Mary's next thought is, okay, I'm not disagreeing with the message, Gabriel, but can you give me an idea of how this is going to happen? You see, her value set was clear. As noted in verse 34, Mary asked the angel, "How can this happen? I'm not even married." So it's a God-honouring value that Mary has, because we all know not being married does not stop a woman from becoming pregnant. What precludes a woman from becoming pregnant is abstinence from sexual relations. And Mary has not had any, and it is not her intent to do so until married. That's why she's asking the question, how is this going to happen? Because I'm not even married yet. And so we see from in there some of the wisdom and the faithfulness of Mary as she's asking the angel to help her to understand how is it that she is going to be pregnant. Luke reveals to us in verse 35 that her pregnancy was going to be, of course, nothing short of a miracle that God is going to perform. Then Gabriel goes on to tell her about Elizabeth, our first wise woman. And he records Gabriel saying to Mary in verse 36, your relative Elizabeth is also going to have a son, even though she is old. If nothing else, Gabriel's a truth teller. And he goes on to say in verse 36 a little bit more, when he says, no one ever thought she could have a baby, but in 3 months she will have a son. And Mary, nothing is impossible to God. And so you too are going to have a son. And no one is going to think that someone like you, as young as you are, can have a baby, just as nobody thought that Elizabeth could have a baby being as old as she was. But God specializes in dealing with older people and newer people and still being able to his will to come about, and the miracles occurring both for Elizabeth and Mary. And then we note this very young lady's statement that I'm going to say declares her as a wise woman. Verse 38, Mary said, I am the Lord's servant. Let it happen as you have said. You see, with wisdom beyond her years, Mary sets an example to every woman who has ever wondered about their value or their place in God's plan. With a simple, I am a follower and a servant of the Lord, let your will be done in my life. And ladies, can I encourage you to speak? Often speak those words in your daily prayer. Lord, I am here to live for you, to honor you, and please, Lord, have your way in my life. Our third wise woman of the Christmas story is Anna. And we need to jump across to Luke chapter 2 to hear Anna's story. Now, around about 40 days after Jesus' birth, Mary and Joseph take Jesus to the temple where they're going to offer a sacrifice. And Luke tells the beautiful story of the exchange that Mary and Joseph have with Simeon. Simeon holds the baby Jesus, praises God, and then he blesses Mary and Joseph. But Simeon is not our focus today. Rather, it is Anna, who is also in the temple at this time. Luke chapter 2 and verse 36 introduces her. The prophet Anna was also there in the temple. Not much more is spoken about Anna except this in verse 38. At this time, Anna came in and praised God. She spoke about the child Jesus to everyone who hoped for Jerusalem to be set free. And it's almost like Anna is one of the very first evangelists for Jesus. Everybody that she's running into, she's telling about the birth of Jesus. She just tells everyone about the Messiah. She is a wise woman. And similar to Elizabeth and Mary, despite her desperate circumstances, she is a hero of the faith. And her circumstances, as described in Luke 2:36 and 37, let us know her exact age. She was 84 years and described as old. She is a widow, only having been married 7 years, and she has no family at all. Night and day, the scriptures tell us, she serves God. She goes to the temple. She was a great prayer, and she often fasted. And just as the case was with Elizabeth and with Mary, despite her circumstances of life, despite her dire circumstances, she continued to make a wise choice to walk closely with God and to serve Him with all of her being. Now, I need to wrap this message up. Did you get that? It's a Christmas thing. Yeah, wrap it up. And I'm going to do so by saying again to all the faithful women of God who are listening to my voice, your gender should be honoured and valued. You have been since day dot and remain through to this moment an integral part of God's blessings and plans. And as you demonstrate the traits of faithfulness exemplified through these three wise women of the Christmas story, may your value in the sight of God and those that are in your life just grow and grow as you see how important women are in God's redemptive story. Women, we honor you equally. And we believe that you are valued as much in God's eyes as we should value you in our eyes. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, the Christmas story has so many different aspects to it. And Lord, if we've just been reminded of three of these beautiful characters this morning, I pray that you would help not only the women, but the men as well, to consider what it means to be wise. Help us, Lord, to know your word and to live by it. For I pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.